Welcome to my channel. Welcome my family. This is USA Fact Story, where mysteries become reality.
Summer of 1921 in Kabwe, Zambia. Inside a limestone hill, miner Tom Zwiegler triggers a dynamite blast to clear lead and zinc ore. When the smoke clears, he sees a human-like face gazing back at him from the rubble. He has just discovered the first early human fossil ever found on the African continent. This is the Broken Hill Skull, or Kabwe 1. It's an almost complete specimen, with a physical presence that feels both familiar and deeply strange. At the time, the scientific establishment was shocked. Most researchers were convinced that the origins of humanity lay elsewhere, yet this discovery placed a significant piece of the puzzle in sub-Saharan Africa. While Zwiegler was simply searching for zinc, he had accidentally unearthed evidence that threatened to disrupt the accepted timeline of our history. This chart shows the prevailing theory of 1921, that human evolution was an orderly relay race from primitive ape to modern man. The linear model assumed a clear path where one species lived, died out, and was entirely replaced by a more advanced successor. Kabwe 1 acted as a biological paradox that refused to settle into a single spot on that line. The skull possessed a brain cavity that had reached the size of contemporary humans living today, yet it simultaneously featured massive, shelf-like brow ridges, ancient features more pronounced than those found on any other fossil. This anatomical mix of advanced and primitive traits presented researchers with a riddle, as the skull didn't fit the expected patterns of a single transitional ancestor. Researchers struggled for decades to classify the skull, desperate to fit it into existing evolutionary categories. Its label changed multiple times. It was initially named Homo rhodiensis before eventually being grouped into a broader category called Homo heidelbergensis. The search for clarity was hindered by the discovery itself. The same dynamite blast that revealed the skull also obliterated the surrounding cave rock. Without the original layers of sediment to provide geological context, scientists lacked the evidence needed to determine the skull's age. Because of that initial haste, Kabwe 1 became a cold case, an orphan in the human family tree with no clear date to anchor it. Modern technological advances eventually allowed researchers to bypass the missing cave sediment. Scientists applied uranium series dating, measuring the radioactive decay of elements within the bone, and attached microscopic sediment. The results showed Kabwe 1 lived in a much more recent era than the scientific community had assumed for nearly a century. By shifting the timeline forward, this data point dismantled the traditional understanding of our ancestry. This more recent date means this robust, primitive-looking human was roaming the Zambian landscape in a relatively modern timeframe. Kabwe 1 was alive at the exact same time the first representatives of our own species, Homo sapiens, were emerging elsewhere in Africa. The hard evidence contradicts the old relay race theory, showing that one human type did not simply disappear when the next arrived. Diverse human species occupied a shared landscape, living in parallel across the continent. Kabwe 1 reflects the modern scientific understanding of evolution as a complex, branching tree. Nature takes experimental turns. Some lineages thrive and continue, while others, like the one represented by this skull, lead nowhere and end quietly. The skull now sits in the Natural History Museum of London, acting as a permanent record of this rewritten history. A single blast of dynamite reminds us that while we are alone today, we are the survivors of an ancient world